All right, everyone. I want to talk to you today about perpetual boredom. So if you're in a point in your life where you're finding yourself bored perpetually and the symptoms are coming out, right? You're going through YouTube over and over again, clicking the home button, hoping the feed refreshes itself. You're going through Netflix trying to find another series to watch. Or you're going through Instagram or Twitter and just doom scrolling, hoping that something interesting will pop up. And this happens maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times a day. It's time for you to get a new hobby or try to figure something else to do with your life, right? Of course, I've been bored before, but when that happens, you want to fill the time that you would be being bored with some sort of new activity you can do, right? So for me, there's plenty of things that I like to do, right? I really like playing sports. If I can play volleyball and basketball, I would love to play that with friends as much as I could, right? Of course, that isn't always possible because, people have jobs and lives to get to. So realistically, you're not going to be able to play that all the time, right? So what's something else you can do when you're perpetually bored, right? So something that's become like a lost art really in the age of information and media and really addictive applications on our phones is the old art of reading. Yes, okay, that's not what this video is about. What this video is about is if maybe you don't want to read anymore, right? And you don't have any sports to play with anyone, and you don't want to do weightlifting, you're kind of just like, I don't want to do those things. Those don't speak to me, even if they're good for me. Something else you can do is, that's right, learn a new language. I want to paint you a picture here so that you understand how easy it is to learn a language in comparison to, say, 30 or 40 years ago before the age of the internet, right? If you were trying to learn Spanish, which is what I'm doing, right? If you tried to learn Spanish 30 or 40 years ago before the Google Translate was out and available for everyone, right? The amount of effort you would have had to put forth back then would have been a complete and total pain in the ass. And if you didn't have a good reason for doing it, why the hell would you do it, right? Back then, you probably would have had to drive somewhere, get to know someone who can actually speak the other language, whether that be a class or someone at your local parish or whatever. You'd have to attend their class or go see them very frequently and very often before you could even start to really get a feel for the language, right? But today, it's all different, right? As with most things in the age of the internet, the answers are usually right before you and very easy to access. It really becomes a matter of asking the right questions, right? Or choosing the right activity. So when it comes to learning a new language, what are the tools that you have available that make it easy, right? We have Google Translate, which is one of the best things that Google has put forth. And even though it's far from perfect, it does an excellent job at least giving you the blueprints of learning the other language so that if you try to use it and you have no understanding of the language, you can at least put some English shit in and spit it out in the other language. And that'll give you a good idea of how to use those. And the best part is once you start using that over and over and over again, you'll start picking up on patterns if you do them frequently enough, and they'll start sticking in your head. And you'll be amazed at what happens when you're like, holy shit, I remembered that. Oh my God, it's like the language is like actually sticking to my brain. That's one of the greatest parts of learning the other language is like, oh my God, I'm remembering it, Second, we have an app called HelloTalk, which I only learned about maybe 2 years ago or so. And the app is fantastic, not because it's like part of this AI fucking shit where, you practice with AI. What it does is it takes you as an English speaker. If you're trying to learn another language, say Spanish, it pairs people together who are trying to learn English that can speak Spanish with people who are trying to learn Spanish who can speak English. And by just pairing you together, the two of you can kind of work out how you want to learn together, right? You're speaking with someone who doesn't know your language very well, and they have something you want, which is to learn their language. Now, a lot of the time, people on the app make an account and delete it a day or two after, but there are plenty of people on the app who are more than willing to help you out with learning their language in exchange for you trying to speak in English with them, right? And trying to help them out with that. And if you so choose to direct the conversation with your chosen partner or whoever it may be, you get to hear about the other cultures of the world and see, God damn, do we have a good living in the United States, So not only do we have HelloTalk and also Google Translate, we also have access to YouTube in the other languages, right? And even Instagram. There's a lot of useful tools on Instagram that you can look up that are excellent for teaching you about phrases that you might not encounter and really just practice and exposure in general. So sometimes when I have my job, right, and I'm bored out of my mind, because we get half an hour breaks every now and then, what I'll do is go on Instagram and instead of like doom scrolling looking for like dumb shit, right, like, any sort of like fuck shit posting on there, what is happening more and more is my feed is starting to be full of Spanish teachers and people teaching me phrases, right? So even if I'm not intentionally looking for Spanish stuff, I get exposed to it continually, and plenty of that stuff on Instagram's actually been sticking in my head. Because don't forget, even though you might learn a language in school, if you don't actually use it and don't actually practice speaking it with another person, then you're not really learning the language. It's not going to stick in your head and you're not really practicing it, right? That's the important part, is practice. Now, of course, I'm entirely selfish in my motivation for learning Spanish. I'm going to be traveling to Argentina again. A lot of the really good volleyball players I've played with in Dallas have actually been from Latin America, and most of them speak Spanish and aren't necessarily fluent in English. Some of them don't speak any at all. So when they see a gringo and the gringo can speak Spanish, even if it's not not very pretty, it makes them turn their head and smile, and they're like, oh my God, there's a guy who actually appreciates Spanish and has tried learning it and can communicate with me. Because when you're trust me, when you're in a foreign land and someone speaks your native language, you're like, oh man, oh my God, you and I speak the same language. You can actually talk to me, right? So for me, learning Spanish as a hobby has been entirely selfish, but very much congruent to my life and very useful. And plus, when you encounter foreigners, which will come up in big cities, you'd be amazed at how much more receptive people will be to you. So if you're perpetually bored, you can always, read books, learn a new language, which trust me is more rewarding than you could possibly imagine, even if it's not the most useful thing in your life, or find something else that interests you and start working on that. For me, it's easy because it's sports, Spanish, and reading. And now this fourth one is actually creating videos. I guess that's another thing you could do, is creating videos and putting them on YouTube. Either way, there's something that you can do that someone else will appreciate, that you can probably maximize or take advantage of, that you're not doing if you're spending time on Instagram and YouTube or watching Netflix for that matter. So I hope I got my point across. If you're finding yourself doom scrolling, looking for new shows to watch, that's probably your brain's way of nudging and telling you it's time to pick up a new hobby, pick up something more productive to do, whether it be related to health, finance, mental wellness, whatever it is for you. That's up for you to decide, but that's your brain's way of saying, hey, I want to do something else and I know I can. I'm a healthy and able individual. Let's get to it and figure this out.